Okay, welcome everyone. And actually, I said this the other day to another meeting, but I do mean it. Like, I am very, very, very glad to see you all. That would be true no matter what. But there are just moments when in the world, and particularly things that have been unfolding here in the States over the last few weeks or months or so, or well, much longer, but that I can honestly say I am especially glad to see you because it's just such a joy to come together with people who are, so committed to and so caring and so creative and so positive and want to come together and, give us a shot at doing something new together. So I can't tell you. It's exactly what we need right now. Hey, Kate, Michelle, good to see you. This is the final gathering of this week. The conversations have been very, very wonderful. Before you go any further, is there anyone here, I know you might have been a member for a while, but is there anyone here who's has never been to a gathering? Just raise your hand. Great. Then welcome. We're glad you can make it. And we will be having, as you all know, I think it's happened again. The person who is going to lead us in, okay, Mal, I might be calling on you. For some reason, we do not have the person who is going to start the opening. So I'm going to say, I was going to have her open it. But at any rate, we'll deal with that. It's not the biggest of life's issues right now. Anyway, just to give you a brief, update on where we're at. We have we've moved well past the 700 member mark, and I think our most recent member is from, one of our most recent members is from Portugal, which I think raises our country count to about 30, which we're obviously very excited about. And honestly, growth is always gratifying. But it's also the case that I think the more I think about it, and we've been having some conversations within the coalition, that given the kind of transformational change that I think all of us would like to see, and that looks different for everyone, but I think we're in agreement that there has to be a profound transformational change in our world. That, ultimately it's not going to be a numbers game. We're not going to simply keep adding on members until one day we have a critical mass. So really what we're focusing on, and I think this will be in this conversation really that we'll be having today, and whether we can reorganize and reconfigure and recreate a more positive relationship with and around the medical conversation and the diagnostic conversation, really grows out of, I think, and hopefully we'll continue more collaborative efforts. I mean, the coalition, I think what we're looking to do is find some creative ways and continue to find creative ways to influence, impact, and hopefully inspire others to bring creativity, whatever that looks like for them, but with a small c, into every aspect of the dementia conversation, whether that's research, whether that's education, whether that's care. All of that needs to be creatively reimagined if we're going to, I think, and this is my opinion, obviously, if we're going to move forward. And there's some big, some nice developments. And actually, I was thinking about it today. What's becoming clear in just the last, I don't know, a couple of days, we get a lot of emails and people always sending us things, which are always very interesting and hard to keep up with. But, even this conversation about how do we reorganize and how do we change and transform the relationship that we have with kind of, I think, both a healthcare system and a biomedical framing that leaves everybody, I think, ill-prepared to come together. I don't care if you're a health professional, personal dementia care partner, family member, no one is supported to do this well and do this in a way that allows people to thrive and live. But certainly we are not alone in this. I mean, in just the last,
I'm going to change this just around a little bit.
Sorry. Can everyone go on mute? If there's just, there's just some background noise. So for example, Kate White, who's here, who's one of our key members and the steering committee member in, wave your hand, Kate, just so people know who you are. She and I had the great good fortune to speak with Dr. Karen Judla, whose report, who is the author of a report that just came out in the UK that's really addressing kind of comprehensively the, I don't know how to say that, but just the absence of meaningful care and particularly diagnosing and after support for the Southeast Asian community. And that's creating a lot of waves in the UK. And then I was also, somebody sent us a report, and honestly, what I didn't do was, and that's my bad, but I can send it out to folks. Anyway, it's a report called Left to Cope Alone, the Unmet Support Needs After a Dementia Diagnosis. Now, those are just two, I think, of many that are beginning to come out. This is, I think it's a becoming conversation that, again, I think we have something creative to offer, but that's going to be the topic, and you'll be told more about it from our two leadership people who are going to be motivating this. But it just makes me more committed than ever for us to work smart, to work collaboratively. We're not looking to reinvent the wheel, and we want to draw upon our collective capacities and creativity and accomplishment to really go wherever we need it and to support the people who want to be doing something more creative in their community. So we're seeing this in Malaysia, where there's now reimagining dementia Malaysia, sorry. But also, I can't tell you how many emails I've gotten this week of just ways that people are approaching us to see if they can partner. And I won't go into great detail. Hopefully we'll be sharing more of that as it unfolds. But the thing I want to stress to all of us, because we have done this, is I can't tell you how excited people are that we exist. And that to me is an important takeaway, because I know you all don't have the same relationship to the day-to-dayness of this work as I do and some of our steering committee members do, but it's happening. And people are kind of now saying, oh, there's some place that if we want to kind of be more radically inclusive, if we want to be innovative, if we want to break out of the mold, if we want to kind of do something more joyful, more fun, more growthful, then now there's a group of people who we can at least go to and say, how do we do this? And then we'll figure out together the best way to build on what we've all done. And believe me, we're gonna be calling upon more of you as we go along. I think there's a lot to be done. But for today, so since the person who was going to lead the opening exercise seems like has not joined us, Mal, would you be willing to step in and create your, in which case, by way of setting up, I mean, the final thing I'll say is one of the things that I believe very strongly is, and some of you know, is that, and I'm not alone in this, but if we're going to continue reimagining anything, I realize that it's hard to reimagine if you're never going anywhere new. I mean, that could be whatever that means. It could be geographically, it could be emotionally, it could be just in our social relationships. You need to always be going somewhere new to be able to imagine anything. And that's what I especially love about play, because I think it gives us, particularly as adults, that freedom to go somewhere new. So with that, we will continue. We'll kind of continue playing. And hopefully in that spirit, you'll also engage in the conversation that we're going to be spending most of our time in. So Mal, why don't we'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad. I mean, I'm sorry the other person isn't going to get a chance to do an exercise, but I kind of luck out because I missed the meeting the other day and left you high and dry, and now I get another chance. So that's pretty awesome. This is going to be kind of a first part breathing exercise, and then insert a little play tail end. So it'll be pretty quick. So just get comfortable in wherever you're sitting. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a nice deep breath in and lean forward, because Mary, I love what you said. It's so great to see everybody. So when we're breathing in and leaning forward, we're going to breathe in the energy that's in front of us, all the beautiful people that we're looking at. And then we'll breathe in, we'll lean in, take in the energy of everyone, and then we'll lean back and breathe out. And by breathing out, we're giving our energy to everyone. Okay, so let's just do a nice deep breath in and lean forward. And take a breath out and lean back. Let's do another one. Breathe in, breathe everybody's energy in, feel it. Feel that happy people, and breathe out and give your energy back. And now on the third one, we'll breathe in, lean forward and make a goofy face. And then when we lean back, we'll go back to neutral. So we'll do that a couple times. So lean in, breathe in, and when you get closer to this camera, make a goofy face. And breathe, lean back, breathe out, go back to neutral. All right, let's do one more big goofy face. All right, ready? Breathe in, lean in. Nice. And breathe out and go back to neutral. And just shake it out, shake it out, shake it out, shake it out. Awesome. Thank you, humans.
Thank you. All righty. Let's continue the play. All right. So at this point, I'd like to bring up our two steering committee members who are motivating, and just going to be saying a little bit about the conversation we hope to create today. And then we'll be going into small groups where you all will kind of continue that, play around with it, see what ideas and thoughts and activities you come up with. And then we'll do a brief reporting out when we come out of the group. So let me introduce Margaret Oldfield and Myrna. Sorry, just have to find the right pieces of paper. Okay, Myrna has lived with dementia for more than a decade. She's a member of Dementia Action Alliance, Purple Angel Ambassador, participant in the Canada Dementia Strategy. I'm sure she does. I mean, she's one of the busier people. I've tried to reach her. I know how busy she is. So I'm sure there's many more things she's involved with, but I thought I would capture just a few. She is just also a passionate advocate for joy and life, and a wonderful writer. We're thrilled that she's able to be part of the fun today. And then Margaret Oldfield is a social scientist, disability scholar, and academic writing coach, whose latest publication is Nothing About Us Without Us, involving people with dementia in qualitative research. I've read it. I highly recommend it. We can include it in our after follow-up email, but please welcome Margaret and Myrna. And Paul, if we could, why don't we spotlight them if you can?
Would you repeat the names of those individuals, please?
Margaret Oldfield and Myrna Norman. But Margaret, in the meantime, you can start off.
Sure.
Actually,
So thanks very much for the introduction, Mary. Do you need to do something, Paula? Do we need to communicate?
how about that too?
Okay.
There we go. Good.
Perfect.
As Mary said, I'm a member of the subcommittee that's particularly looking at addressing stigma against people with dementia in the healthcare system. I think this group is from two countries, the US and Canada. Our healthcare systems are a bit different, but there's many similarities among the attitudes of healthcare professionals towards people with dementia and dementia itself. And this subcommittee was prompted by a Twitter post after a presentation made by advocates living with dementia to, I think it was two doctors. A well-known doctor said in his Twitter post that the advocates were claiming to have dementia, but clearly didn't have it. They were fabricating an entirely public false view of the condition, and they were inventing new ways of looking at experiences that patients have and what may help them. So one of the coalition members was very upset by this post, shared it with some of the subcommittee members, and it was an example of the stigma against people diagnosed with dementia. The part of the stigma is assuming that all people with dementia behave and look in the same way, in only one way, and we know that's not true. So the subcommittee started by discussing the harm that this stigma causes people living with dementia, and not only people living with dementia, but their family members and healthcare professionals themselves. So what we're doing today is gathering stories about people's experiences with this kind of stigma, and we hope you can help us. What we're going to do with the stories is eventually create some kind of art piece or play or some other creative endeavor using the stories that we're gathering. We've already gathered some. We're gathering some here today, and we'll be sending out another email asking for stories. So we want to hear your stories about the stigma against people with dementia from the point of view of people with dementia themselves, from the point of view of family members. And if any of you are health professionals or know health professionals who've dealt with this issue, we'd also like to hear about health professionals, doctors, nurses, psychiatrists, sociologists, not sociologists, psychologists, and so on, when they have to give out multiple different diagnoses to one patient, because we found this is an issue we've discussed in our subcommittee when diagnoses change from dementia to mild cognitive impairment, back to dementia to something else. It's hard on the patients, it's hard on the healthcare professionals. So we'd also like to hear stories about how, good stories, positive stories about how people felt supported and cared for by healthcare professionals, and not just the professionals, but the system itself. We know that all the healthcare professionals operate in a system that can create barriers for them and can also help them. So now I'm going to ask Mirella to share a story of her experience as a person living with dementia with this kind of stigma. Over to you, Mirella.
Hi, thanks very much. Thanks to Mary and Margaret, and also for all of you giving up your time to come today. It's great being here. In 2008, I was diagnosed with frontal temporal dementia, given 5 to 8 years to live, and the doctor said, go home, get your affairs in order. I said, okay. He said, do you have any questions? Well, I didn't have questions because I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. So I went home. And then about 2 years later, I went to see another doctor, a subclinic, and he diagnosed me with subclinical vascular dementia. One thing I should have said initially is when you get a diagnosis with dementia, you don't have the availability to get life insurance. My driver's license was taken away. We had to move because our new house had a lot of stairs, and of course I wouldn't be able to do stairs. So the sort of financial cost was huge to us, as well as the emotional and mental costs to all our family. Then somewhat later on, I got a diagnosis of MCD or MCI, also with mixed dementia, but typically to the frontal lobe. 5 years later, I got an opportunity to go out to our university that has a rather large brain health center, and I was given the diagnosis of Alzheimer's. So I've already been through several diagnoses. I'm trying to get my feet on the ground, and somebody keeps pulling the rug out from underneath. I was able to find a clinic that would see me once every 6 months, and they diagnosed me with Lewy body disease. So it's been a real roller coaster, and I'm not unique. The last specialist I was at told me that if I would go outside with him into the parking lot, we could do exercises together, and that would cure me. And my GP recently, when I said it was time for me to start a medication, said to me, "Oh, you can't have dementia because you can say a whole sentence." That was 2022, like, OMG, that's just terrible. So as I said, financially, we moved into a new home. We got a small patio for gardening, which is one of my loves of my life. And so I've lost a lot of independence, but I'm not about to stay down. So I find a way. And the other thing that is just vital to know is there's no support for people like me unless we create our own. And we are able to create our own for the most part, but we need your stories, we need your help, and we need to share joy. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Myrna. Do you want to announce your webinar series?
Oh my goodness. In Canada, and of course on Zoom, it's everywhere. We're having, I was fortunate enough to get an agency to help me with technical, etc., because I know nothing about that. And so we've planned a panel discussion that's going to be only people with dementia sharing their wisdom. The first one's going to be July 13th, August 10th, and August 24th. I'll put some information on the chat line, but it should be amazing. Just people with dementia, imagine that. And they can say sentences.
Thank you. Just a friendly, given that we've now gone through 2 of these gatherings and are benefiting from what we've discovered, then just to add a little bit to what Margaret and Myrna are saying, we'll go into breakout rooms. They're roughly about 22 minutes. So
before we do that, can I put in the chat the questions that we're going to ask?
yeah, why don't you do that while I'm saying this?
Sure.
So I think that it's, in a way, what we want to emerge, and we hope we really are asking somebody in each group to take some notes. Obviously, if there's a story shared, try to capture that. We'll probably go back to that person, so we really need to with it. But also, we also would like to know, like a sharing of just how might we creatively engage this? I mean, we have not yet settled on how we want to do this. How can we kind of what can we create that would break through the noise and actually allow us to really, I think, have an impact? And do what you can do in 22 minutes. We're going to come back to all of us, everyone, we're all ambassadors. So and particularly if you know of other groups, I know Susan Chiplin and Philly is involved in this kind of work with medical schools, I believe. But if you know others, again, we're looking to have this be as collaborative and inclusive as possible. And again, we're not the first people to be concerned about this. So add that to the mix as well. But we'll create what you can create. And so the suggested topics are in the chat. Anything else
through them,
Myrna, before we break into small groups?
Yeah, can I just introduce what we want people to discuss?
Sure.
Sure. So please, at the beginning of the breakout rooms, pick somebody to be a note taker, or hopefully somebody volunteers. And we'd like you to gather your stories. We'd love if you could tell a story or someone else's of a person living with dementia interacting with the healthcare system. Or if you're a health professional or you know somebody who is, talk about having to give multiple different diagnoses to one patient. Your stories can be positive or negative. We'd like to know what happened. And how did you or the other person that you're talking about feel? So I might move between the breakout rooms. You might see me come and go. And then at the end, when we finish that, we're going to discuss what Mary just talked about, how we might do this creatively to use the arts to raise awareness about the harms caused by the stigma that we're talking about. If you run out of story ideas, then please move to that question. So maybe I'll put that in the chat too. If no one, if you have time before the session ends after sharing stories. So I put that in the chat.
Okay, so we're ready to, because I'm just cognizant of time, so we can now break into it. All right. So Paula, you want to send us away to the Netherlands? We're back. By the way, apologies. I know some of you ended up in smaller rooms than we were. There was a miscommunication that I was responsible for, that we wanted more people in the rooms, but at any rate, hopefully you were still able to to chat together. So why don't we have about 8 minutes. Why don't we open things up and just get a sense of the conversations, obviously. And if the thing I would ask is if the people who took notes could identify yourself in the chat, just so we know who to follow up with and if there's questions or anything like that. But otherwise, any of the groups, one of you step up and just let us know about the conversation. Great, thank you.
I'll go for our group.
Go for it.
We started with extraordinary stories. I mean, very, very powerful stories. And the first one was absolutely, well, all of them were heart-rending, but also uplifting in other ways. And I think what came through was the lack of people understanding what the complexity of a diagnosis in the system, and that actually many people just don't understand that it's something incredibly delicate and nuanced. And we had one where the person just was told with a family member, go figure it, go figure it, like that was everything, was, just go away. Somebody else is at the moment in a huge monumental struggle with an insurance company over the definition of what cognitive impairment is, and somehow having to prove that you've got dementia. It sounded really just incredible intergenerational story. We ended up talking about the struggle and the joy around these situations. So that was our very rich conversation.
Others?
I can go next. Our group was a small group. There were 3 of us, and 2 of the other individuals are family members. So what really stood out was the whole stigma that's placed upon the person with dementia and the family members' inability to always find support for what they're really needing. And as they were talking, what really struck me was that it's almost kind of a survival of the fittest in our society. There's not a lot of compassion or patience for anyone who can't keep up and, be on task with everyone else. So if you're hard of hearing or anything like that, people can feign compassion for just so long, but then they need to move on. So some of the big things, the words that struck me were the sense of hopelessness. And in some way, one of our person used the phrase game over. So almost as if that was it. That was the end of the line. I also want to kind of open it up to the fact that the family of one of the other persons stopped calling and visiting when things became too hairy or was uncomfortable. So I also mentioned that Laurelyn and Mirella were able to offer their own story as well, if they wanted to. So I don't know, Laurelyn, did you want to say something?
I'll just say briefly that my mother has been declining for some years, but she was finally diagnosed with dementia and probably caused by Alzheimer's just last November. And I've noticed a shift of when I use those words of how people respond to me and how they respond to her. And I wonder whether other people have noticed that, because I mean, me, it's just sort of like this, both the words that they use, the energetics that I feel is sort of like, oh, that's so terrible. And that's been my experience, that even though she's the same person, once those words are used, things have, I noticed a shift.
I think that's what we have.
Others, we have a couple minutes. And again, we will share these recordings and, the notes, relevant points from other conversations. So you'll have a sense of everything. But why don't we hear from one more? Mirella, you have your hand up?
Hello?
Yes.
Sorry, I can't hear too well here. My mom is very noisy. Forgot what I was going to say. What hurts me the most is if we're in a social setting, if we go to a community center that we used to go to. We just recently started after 2 years the other day. It was outdoors. But when we used to go to the community center and my mom would start to say something, the coordinator would say, go sit somewhere else, to people that were beside us. So we're home and we're isolated going through all of this, and then everybody just stays away from us whenever we get together with other people. It's terrible. It's a very terrible feeling, being isolated in public and being isolated at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to share that. I have other things, but it's okay. There's just too many.
No, please.
If there's time, I'll just.
Yeah, go ahead. Please, Susan, jump in.
In our small group, we talked about the stigma that leads people to, leads a care partner not to share with his wife that her diagnosis is a dementia diagnosis. And then one of our members, one of the group's members, talked about the fact that her own mother said, after she had cared for our group member's grandmother who had dementia, that if she got the diagnosis, she did not want to be told. And so that struggle for the family to figure out what is the right thing to do, and what does it say about stigmas themselves that care partners feel the best way to protect the joyfulness and integrity of someone's life is not to tell them.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're about ready to exit. I mean, we will be coming back to all of you for your creative input as we kind of figure out how we're going to shape this conversation and bring it out. Obviously, again, feel free to share with me or through the Reimagining Dementia email any further thoughts, particularly about how we might go about engaging this. What are thoughts about who might we collaborate with? Who's kind of, what are the conversations taking place? For example, I know a number of people who are really seriously engaged in creating in non-diagnostic approaches. Because in some ways, what we're talking about overall is the impact of diagnosis. I don't care what you're diagnosed with, it so immediately begins to overturn who you are. So there's all kinds of conversations taking place that I think we could partner with, ally with, be informed by. So please share all of that, but we will keep you all in the loop. You're very active partners in this. And again, thank you all for coming out. I know it's late June, everybody's thinking summer and vacation, so it meant something that you took an hour today. It's good to see you all, and Paula, why don't you, let's play it out.
Asking if people, note takers, could send their notes to Mary. You want to remind
Yeah.
people, Mary?
Send everyone to reimaginingdementia@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And I'll make sure they get into the hands of the right people.
I put the your address in the chat.
Great. All right, let's play ourselves out.